Greetings. This is Ayman El Tarabishy from the International Council for Small Business. I am the Executive Director and will wait 60 seconds to get everybody started. So let's start. This is the ICSB and USASBE Fireside Chat on online education. I am delighted to have many of you join us today. The last we saw in the registration, we have over 26 countries from around the world joining us. First, I would like to introduce the panelists for today. Dr. DeNoble, ICSB Senior Vice President of Partnerships and past President of USASBE. Dr. Jill Kickle, President of USASBE. Dr. Jeffrey Alves, ICSB Editor of JICSB, and also the ICSB and USASBE past Presidents. Dr. Eric Liguiri, Immediate Past President of USASBE. Mrs. Dia Yusuf, ICSB Vice President of Partnerships, and Mrs. Julie Shields, CEO of USASBE. They'll be joining us as well shortly. Here are the panelists. Quickly, let's just go around the panelists and let's welcome everybody. Dr. Jeffrey Alves, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Welcome, everybody.
Where are you right now? How's it going?
I'm at home and it's snowing.
Oh, how much snow are you getting?
Oh, it's only about 2 inches, but it's after the nice weather we've had, it's not welcome, shall we say.
Oh my God. And Eric, where are you?
I am at home as well, but I'm actually I'm in Florida at my family's place, and it's sunny and gorgeous.
Good. And are you staying indoors?
Yes.
Oh.
Yep. Fully indoors.
Okay. Jill, where are you, Jill?
I am in LA, and it is gorgeous, sunny, and palm trees.
Wonderful. And Dr. DeNoble, where are you and how are you doing?
I am in sunny Southern California in San Diego and experiencing that same gorgeous weather that Jill is with palm trees.
Okay. All right. And Dia, where are you, Dia?
Hi, everybody. I'm in Indonesia at home, so far away from you.
And what time is it and how is the weather?
This is early morning here. It's about 5 p.m. in the morning. So now still cloudy here.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for all joining us. Julie is joining us in a minute. She just sent me a message. She's wrapping up something and she'll join us in a minute. And once she comes in, we'll also introduce her here. But let me go to the next slide just to start the fireside chat. So, okay, the fireside chat was actually put together very quickly, but we were just delighted to have everybody join us from USASBE, our partners, and also ICSB. As you can see, we're all over the world, from West Coast to East Coast to Indonesia. And at some point, we'll bring panelists as well from different planets and galaxies here. But for this fireside chat, and Dr. DeNoble and Jill and Julie and Jeff and I got on a quick call and we said we need to reach out to all our members worldwide. And we've been dealing with this crisis and we've been dealing with this sudden change that we all need to start teaching online. And some of us are advanced and some of us are novices and some of us have experimented before, have played with the technology before, but we haven't really engaged fully. And yet within 2 or 3 weeks, we had to move fast. Not fast, super fast. So ICSB and USASBE got on a hasty call on a weekend, and everybody joined, and we discussed some ideas. And the outcome of these ideas was we need to do a faculty-to-faculty fireside chat. Most of you are getting a lot of engagement from universities, from schools and partners on how to teach online. but we need to kind of slow down a little bit and have a faculty discussion. What's going on? How are you feeling? How is it going? So this fireside chat was a cultivation or a product of all these minds coming together and putting this platform together for discussion. So how it'll work is we will have 3 or 4 questions listed here, and in these questions we'll go around the panelists, and they've gotten the questions beforehand, but I told them I'm going to pick on them and ask them to answer. So some of them are going to answer from their mind, some of them are going to answer from their heart, and usually they're going to do a combination of both. And we're going to go around each question and ask them to answer. At the same time, if all of you attending this session, if you look carefully on your right-hand side, you see something called a chat or question box. If you enter your questions or your comments in this, at the end of the session, we'll go through them and we'll ask the panelists to answer them. And I'll read the question for them and saying, what do you think? Well, how do you react to this? So it's going to be an open mic of sorts for a Q&A session. So that's how it will work here on this session. So let's start. We have an hour, we have a lot to cover, and we have a lot of panelists to cover here. So let me start. Question number 1, and I'll start out with the people that are in nice sunny weather, just to level the playing field here, right? So why don't we start with Jill? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, you're enjoying the weather here, so let me start here. Please share your experiences with teaching online. When did you start? Your first impression? What was most exciting, and what terrified you?
Okay. Do you want me to go in reverse order? No, kidding. No, when we started, so as many of the universities and colleges were told to go online, we were pretty much given a good 48 hours to kind of make the transition. And it was early on that they decided, as many of you have gone through this process, to really ramp up the faculty. And we use Zoom. I don't know how many of you, others probably use Canva, use maybe Adobe, use probably other technologies. But we started, a couple of weeks ago. I think what the first impressions were, I was a bit nervous because using the technology, I'm definitely not a pro. And it was the first time teaching really online. I mean, we always have these Zoom calls and meetings and things like that. But it wasn't too bad. I think one of the things that I did early on was I relied on a couple of students who knew IT better than I did. So just saying, hey, this is what I don't know, reached out to them. And I said, in the class, I said, will you be our Zoom ambassadors? And so they helped. In fact, we did the very first class, we did a live case, and the live case was out of Indonesia. So we were planning on that anyway, to do a Zoom kind of live case. So I guess it worked out. But what I was surprised with is just, the technology behind it. So, the chat features and the Q&A features was just a nice, really touch to it. And the ability to really, now that our students have left the campus and they've gone home, and home could be anywhere in the world, right? We're still able to deliver on the technology. And deliver on our courses and our learning goals. So I guess first impressions, and also what's most exciting was, those things. What terrified me is that, maybe not having a backup plan, always going on with one, platform and relying on one platform. So what happens if Zoom goes down, and where is that? Where do I rely on new technology, and what do I do in that case? So we've gone through some scenarios on that, and I can talk a little bit more on that when we get to more of the things to avoid and some of the things to do as well. But thank you.
Thank you, Jill. I'm going to go to the other person that's having fantastic weather. Alex, are you there?
Oh, I'm here. All right. Well, I have I've been a professor now for 37 years, and believe me, I know my way around a classroom. When I walk into a class, I know my environment. That's my home. That's where I live, and that is absolutely natural to me. So, as experienced of a professor in that way as I am, I don't have a lot of experience teaching online. I've done a couple of minor sessions on it, but I've never really had to manage an entire course online. So, and just like Jill, it's the being able to use the different platforms. I'm very comfortable using Skype or Google Hangout at this point, and now I have to switch to Zoom and learn all of its idiosyncrasies, and so that's a challenge to me. And but as Jill mentioned, we were given 48 hours to do our first class online, and you have to adapt. So it's a learning curve, and I spend quite a bit of time ramping up on Zoom, and there are still features I have to learn, like how to do a group breakout and things like that, but we're getting there because the mission is to keep it as seamlessly as possible for our students.
Great, thank you. I know Julie just joined us here. So Julie, greetings. First of all, let me congratulate you on being the CEO of USASBE. I know you've taken over in 5 days, and you have to move mountains now. So welcome to the session. Welcome to the Fireside Chat. The question is, your experiences in moving to teaching online. How did it go? What's your first impression? What terrified you?
Well, first off, Ayman, thank you very much for the invitation. Can you hear me okay?
Very well.
Perfect. So I appreciate it very much. I have to say that I very literally started as CEO the moment that my previous institution went to teaching online. So because of this, so I actually don't have a requirement to teach online. That being said, I'm in a doctoral program right now, and so as a student, I'm actually learning online now, and that was not the intent of the program. So maybe when we get to some of the later questions, I would be more than happy to answer anything about what works and what doesn't work. But no, I would agree with when Jill said, some of the terrifying stuff. Yeah, that would have terrified me too, but I dodged the bullet.
Well, we're gonna get back. We're gonna get back to you. So another person in a nice sunny weather. Dr. Eric Liguiri.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah.
from Florida. How are you?
I'm great. So I guess maybe I've taught online 4 times in the last 10 years. And I think when I first started, my first impressions were this isn't going to work. You can't teach entrepreneurship this way. The technology isn't where it needs to be. I think, the last time around that I did it, I had a very different impression. And so I'm excited because as much as this, scenario has pushed us this direction much faster than anyone anticipated, I think, from where we were 10 years ago to where we are today, the technology is so much better and people are much more comfortable with it. I'm not saying people are comfortable with it. I'm saying they're much more comfortable than they were or would have been 10 years ago. And so if you can get past that first impression, I think you could start to garner some excitement for the potential that this could have as an educational tool, kind of long term.
Thank you. And this is fascinating here because just in less than 60 seconds, we had a person that called for Zoom ambassadors, and the first case was in Indonesia. And then we talked to the CEO of USASBE, and when she says, I'm just starting my PhD and I'm diving deep into learning. And then I have Eric, the immediate past president of USASBE, saying, we started in the beginning, I didn't like it, but I've changed my mind. And now we have a professor emeritus where it's not sunny, it's snowy, it's cold. and he's now retired, but he's now moved onto online teaching and education and communication. And Professor Jeff Alves, tell us how it all started with you and your impression.
Well, it first started in 2002, believe it or not, when I was asked to do an online course in e-business. And as you can imagine, the technology was different. And I did what a lot of other faculty were doing as they approached teaching online. I just tried to transfer what I did in the classroom and the kind of activities that took place there to an online environment, including delivering lectures and that sort of thing. And I very quickly learned that that wasn't the way to go. And so while we had assignments, we had actually had groups working on cases. We also had a mandatory chat session. Now, there were 27 students in the class, which in my opinion is too many for the kind of interaction I wanted. But we had mandatory chat, and part of the grade was whether you showed up for class. And that was very, very interesting. In fact, one of the things that I learned early on was that it's very challenging to moderate a chat. You've got to go in with a set of issues, and you've got to make sure that you keep coming back to the issues, and yet be flexible enough to follow some others if that's where the class is going. But you've got to be able to cut off discussion down certain paths. This was really exciting for me. It was obvious then, as it is today, that the students know more about technology than I do. And that's probably the one thing that has, quote, terrified me all along. More recently, we took our non-traditional undergraduate program all online. And we use a learning management platform called D2L, which allows us to do a lot of the things that everybody's been talking about in an integrated way, including recording podcasts, having students record presentations, and so forth. So for me, following the path of technology and adapting it and learning how to use it has been fascinating. And I will say that you develop a relationship with your students in a different way, but nonetheless, you do develop, I think, pretty close relationships with a number of your students in an online environment. It may feel safer for them not to have to talk to you face to face. I don't know, but nonetheless, it's challenging. The issue of scale is one that I think a lot of the schools are wrestling with. How many students are appropriate for the course? And that depends upon what you're trying to deliver and how you're trying to deliver it.
Great, thank you. So far, all the answers we got here were US based, but ICSB is international here. So, Dia, what's your take on all of this from an Asia perspective, from an Indonesia perspective?
Yes, well, actually, I myself is not a lecturer in the university, but I also as a business coach and also a mentor. So I have also experience teaching online, mostly for small, medium enterprise and work planner. I have a program starting about 2015 and 2015 until now about mentoring and teaching online. The first impression is, yeah, it's okay. And the most exciting is be more focused on what topic you discuss. So not many distractions compared if we are doing on offline, of course. What makes me terrified is the connection here is not so stable in the developing country like Indonesia, but it's okay.
Great, and it's fascinating you raised the issue of mentoring online, which we haven't even covered here. But let me go to the next slide because I want to get into the next question right here. Let me just click on it. the question comes as, what's your new orientation to students? You know, and what I'm trying to get into the heart of this question here, and Jeff talked a little bit about it, is how many students are enough in a chat room or in an online class? Is 26 too big? Is 15 the right amount? Is 10 the right amount? Right? And now we're dealing with a new normal here where everybody is working from home or working remotely, and we're trying to have these high learning moments with these students, with colleagues, conversations in terms of research, engagement, right? Are we capturing the same essence as Alex mentioned? It's not the same as being walking in a classroom versus sitting online. So Alex, I'm gonna go back to you here. You raised this issue and you made it a clear point that you're saying, I've been teaching for such a long time, moving to this online doesn't feel the same. Expand your opinion on this.
Well, I mean, what I'm most concerned with is student engagement. And this to me is the new normal. And I'm trying to get a sense. Now, I know there are tools such as discussion boards, polling, and things like that. Now, those are tools that I haven't learned how to use effectively yet, but I'm gradually ramping up my repertoire. But I ran my first online class last week, and you know, we had a fascinating guest speaker, and out of a class of maybe, I mean, the class had about 25 people in it, and I only had engagement from about 3 to 4 people. So on one hand, I'm worried. I mean, I'm concerned. Are students really comfortable engaging online? Or I almost had a sense that people clicked into it so that they were registered for attendance, but then just went off and doing whatever else they're doing, because I really struggled with trying to get student engagement. You know, so I'm going to make it a point to learn the tools of discussion boards and polling and things like that, so that I can get a sense that students are with me rather than just seeing their name as a participant. Are they really engaging? That's my big concern at this point.
Okay, so I'm going to switch to Eric here, because Eric talked about that he initially didn't like it, then he changed his mind and he likes it. Eric, what about engagement, student engagement?
I think this is an interesting point. And I think what Alex brings up is, you know, one of those things that every time you go and you teach online, you learn, right? And so every time we do something new in the classroom, we learn. This is the same exact thing. The first time you run a simulation, you learn and you do it differently the next time. And so I think being deliberate with your pedagogy and thinking about how you can better facilitate that engagement, whether it means synchronous learning and using video to make sure that you've got, you know, eye-to-eye contact, having mechanisms in place where you systematically call on random people so they're a little bit more on their toes and a little bit more engaged, having more clear rubrics around how you grade participation and giving feedback earlier in the semester so people know where they stand and have a chance to improve, i.e. they know that they haven't been participating at the level you want them, but now they know that and they can improve. I think those things all become very natural, part of the learning process for someone when they're teaching online for the first time. When I look at this notion of the new normal, the one thing that keeps resonating with me as I flip my class online right now is, how would I have done this if I was starting over at the beginning of the semester? Because right now I feel like I'm going to have the benefit of an engagement halo because the students have already built up a face-to-face rapport with me and with one another. And I've wondered, how do you replace that if you were starting new at the beginning of a semester? Because I think that's a totally different challenge. I don't know what the answer to it is, but I think it's a really interesting question. And I guess we're fortunate in that at least we've had some time with our students in a lot of cases to have that rapport so that we get a little bit more benefit of the doubt.
You know, I love the word called engagement halo. I think that, and Jill also mentioned an ambassador. It doesn't have to be Zoom ambassador, but just an online ambassador. Jill, react to this concept of engagement
Yeah.
halo and ambassador.
Yeah, I love what Eric has to say. It's a part of engagement, I think, even for the first time when I was teaching last week, is one really thing is just have their webcams on. That means a lot in terms of getting the students, they're front and center with you, they can see each other, and they can have that immediate engagement. And I think that's just a very basic, easy thing to do. Another thing is, there's so many ways of thinking about, if you're teaching a 3-hour classroom, I'm teaching a 3-hour course, and it goes over, I have about 70 students. And it's made me rethink in terms of how do I structure that class, but how do I structure it in such a way that, they're not tuned off after 15, 30 minutes. And so I try to think about a 3-hour class throughout the entire week. So smaller chunks. So even though the class we meet on a Wednesday evening, we may meet for just an hour. But then throughout the week, there's exercises, there's short videos, there's voice over PowerPoint types of things, discussion boards, voice threads that can easily be integrated kind of throughout, and it keeps them engaged where they're just like, hey, I'm just coming back on the one night, but they're also, they're thinking they have assignments in the front end and the back end of the week. So really thinking, kind of keeping it simple, keeping it a little bit shorter and to the point, and really just using other types of asynchronous, synchronous technology to be able to deliver. And another thing is just be really, in terms of even having a weekly wrap up would actually be kind of fun to have at the end, and having them maybe chime in at the end of a weekly wrap up, and having them do their own videos and have them do their own Zoom meetings as they do pitches and presentations to funders and supporters. So and having students be accountable and taking responsibility for their own learning, I think is even more important in this kind of online environment.
So Jill, I'm going to press you a little bit here because you're in Los Angeles, okay? And here's the thing that we talked with colleagues. Are we in the business of educating, or are we moving to edutainment, which is education and entertainment in a way, so to allow for engagement? We've heard this word before.
Yeah.
I did not make up this word. This is a word that a lot of people use, saying this is coming more and more prevalent. What's your thoughts on this? And I'm going to ask quickly to Jeff to jump in on this after you finish.
Yeah. I think there is a part of today's students, their attention spans as they were 10 years ago are not very long. And I think we need to find really creative ways. Yeah, maybe engaging a lot of humor. Maybe humor really helps out kind of right now. But also having them in terms of, for them to be, kind of right on and in the zone, I guess, if you will, of pulling on each other and pushing each other in terms of, and so ways you can create really dynamic, let's say, not entertainment, but ways that they can learn from each other, and exercises that involves them, not necessarily coming to you for the answers or looking for you to the answers, but looking at each other. And in the online environment, they very much can do that instead of, you totally being the focus and the center of keeping their attention span.
Jeff, what's your thoughts about this?
Actually, I've got a number, but I don't want to. I need to focus. A couple of observations. One is that just like the old quote distance learning approach, you typically wanted to have somebody monitoring the interaction, particularly the feedback from the students, because most of it was sort of a one-way lecture. And yet, as the professor, you want to know how the students are responding as close to real time as possible, and that's probably a good idea when we're running online courses, at least for some of the modalities. The other observation that I made fairly early on, all of us have had students who are very quick to answer a question. It's like they start talking before they actually think. And then there are other students who very carefully consider how to respond to the question. And quite often, their voice does not get heard. And in an online environment, your typing speed is as important as your speaking speed. And so students who may be a little bit slower on the verbal uptake have a chance to contribute on more of an equal footing than they have in a face-to-face classroom. Normal, I mean, I don't know that there is a new normal other than we have such an array of tools available. I think many of us have used a hybrid approach at one point or another, using internet-based or online resources in addition to the face-to-face. I think it's just a question of getting used to not having that face-to-face. Jill's recommendation about turning the video on, I think, is really, really important. I hate to say this, but I was doing a course when one of the students actually fell asleep on us, and there he was right in front of us. Everybody saw him, and we just let him go. Class ended, we let him go. Anyway, those are my quick thoughts.
Good. This question is for both Dia and Julie. And Julie, we're going to wait on you here because this is going to be a tricky one here. So you can answer it a little bit later here. But here's the question dealing with the new normal here. You're starting your PhD program, and Dia, you're a practitioner. You do consulting, you do mentorship here. But think about this: as you move forward in your research or your mentorship or consulting or practitioner based. In research, you get evaluated on the number of publications and citations you make. With DIA, you get evaluated on the number of mentors you have, or the clients you had, or the engagements you had. But we just also received an email and today saying that there's certain technologies that there's overuse from them, and they recommended that we create our YouTube channels to tape our synchronous sessions on YouTube channels for students around the world to follow them, because sometimes there's issues with technology. So Julie, here's the question. Imagine 3 years from now, 4 years from now, you taught many classes, you've done this, and you have 10,000 followers on your YouTube channel. You have 15,000 followers on your YouTube channel following all the synchronous sessions you're doing, the lectures you're doing. Plus you have your citations. Has this changed the playing field? Has this changed what an educator means teaching online? Not just citations, but, and I'm going to use this word because Eric is creating new words here, followers, in terms of following your channel when you're teaching. Let me start with Dia. Dia, what's your reaction?
Yes, so many followers. Sometimes I also do a channel in YouTube, and when we are explain, then the follower is can engage with me. I give the number of the event, like today to respond this crisis. I'm now running the program crisis response for the SME Indonesia, live online coaching and mentoring one-on-one program to support, encourage, and to strengthen the SME business owner. So many business owners throughout Indonesia join this program, and they are so exciting because we can support them one by one. Yeah, I mean, because the problem is cannot be generalized sometimes.
Great, thank you. Let me go to the next question because we're at the halfway point here, and I want to give people more time to move to the next question here. So question number 3. We're all in a crisis moment here, but also a crisis moment presents opportunities, right? And it allows us to think differently. It allows us to come up with new ways of thinking or of having a good conversation here. Jill talked a little bit about, engagement, having humor as a way of engaging students, asking them to do things, new videos, podcasts, you name it. But if you all are now into this, right? How do you think you as an educator and as a teacher, what's your quick reaction to saying this is maybe the path that we need to follow more of? And I'm being very gray here or very general here because I really don't know how to position this question, but yet the sense is we need to move in some direction here. So I'm going to pick on Eric to start us off here because he has some great words that he can share with us. All right, Eric, what do you think?
I was having a conversation with a couple colleagues the other day, and we were talking about what would be the coolest outcome from this sort of mass intervention on entrepreneurship education if we're thinking, 3 years in the future. In fact, I think Julie and I even talked about it a little bit. And for me, we have so many faculty who've never had the opportunity and or the desire to teach online that are now being forced into this space because there's just no other option. It's almost necessity-based online education. And because I'm just going to keep making up words for you, Ayman. And as I think about that, I guess what excites me about where we might be 3 years from now is I don't know that going completely online is a direction I want to endorse. I still very much value the face-to-face element of what I do every day, and the approach by which we teach entrepreneurship, which is very hands-on and kind of live, at least at my university. But I think there are always ways to integrate technology into the classroom in new and different ways that improve it and enrich it and add more flexibility to it. And so I think that this intervention is going to help a bunch of educators experiment with new technology and take away little pieces that they might be able to use to jazz up their day-to-day classrooms, even if we're not going to be online completely going forward.
Okay, so there's a way out, Alex. Eric is just saying that we're not going to always go online. Let's say we go back. Things are normal, hopefully fairly soon. And now you can go back to your classroom and teach all in the classroom. Would you use technology to say maybe 1 or 2 or 3 sessions out of the semester, let's get all online and have a Zoom session or have a session online? How would you react to this?
Oh, absolutely. What I see is an expansion of the tools in my toolbox. Now, what this made me realize is that I was operating, in a face-to-face mode in a very traditional kind of a way with a limited set of tools in my toolbox. I could see using a lot of these technologies woven into what I do to better enhance the classroom experience. But as I try to make sense of, what's going on here, I see some incredible opportunities, some teaching moments. So, for example, we teach our students in entrepreneurship to be adaptive, iterating business models and things like that. We now are in a situation where we have to practice what we preach in terms of the adaptation. I'm using this, for example, to do some illustrations in entrepreneurship. For example, I learned today on CNN there was a 3D printing company who was printing gadgets and widgets now switched their whole operation to develop plastic face masks for healthcare workers. I also learned about a microbrewery that switched its whole operations to making disinfectants. And so we could use this as a real opportunity to adapt and ask the kind of questions where our students can then be challenged. How do you make these kinds of adaptations? And the other area, and I'll turn it over to someone else, but is in research. You are going to see a whole new stream of research coming out as a result of this crisis. Business models, changing business models, not only just methods and delivery mechanisms in a classroom, but responding to crisis, leadership, entrepreneurship kind of research streams that are going to come out of this. So I see a lot of opportunities for academics, both teachers and researchers, to really build on this experience.
So, Jill, I know you're going to agree with this, so there's no reason to say I agree with you here, but you teach 75 students, right? That's a lot, right? So how would you format or create a class for 75 students where you're doing online and on campus? What's the right mix, if you may?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going on mixed or just doing totally online, I think
Blended.
Blended. Yeah, I mean, I think this gives us an opportunity to really kind of rethink. I like the idea that we're going to have, you know, from this experience, we're just going to have a whole new kind of set of tools that we can use and augment, you know, our classroom with. The caution, the one piece of caution though, is that, you know, our face-to-face, a lot of times a lot of us are very much, as entrepreneurship educators, we're very just ingrained into what the students are doing. And, you know, we give them the charge to, you know, start up their own ventures and get out of the building and develop an MVP and pivot and do a product market fit and build, measure, and learn. And these are all the things we're actually doing right now, we're told to do, because we have to build an online course, you know, just as a kind of a little bit on the fly, and doing it in such a way that doesn't overwhelm us or create so much fear in us, but doesn't overwhelm our students. And I think right now what's the issue is that there's so much uncertainty about, you know, what's going to happen next. And I think giving just some very kind of, again, just going back to simple, kind of very concise, very, you know, easy ways of how students can be engaged. And with 75 students, if I was taking it part blended, you know, of course that classroom engagement is everything. But think of all the tools now that we have that, think about it. We do customer discovery. Customer discovery can be done in a whole different way right now, if we use some of the technology that we're learning. As we build out and we test and we build out our prototypes, and there's so much, our students are already doing some of this already, but it just takes it to a whole new level that we haven't kind of seen before. And the idea that we can be more connected, even though right now it's more separated but together, but the more we can actually be connected, the more we know about each other and the way what we can create new opportunities for the world, and not just our own communities.
Great. Jeff, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question now. You were a dean before. Let's say we go to the blended perspective. It's very simple. When you're a dean and you had only on-campus classes and faculty doesn't show up to the classroom, students are there, that's a big no-no. That's a big problem when a faculty does not show up to an on-campus class when it's scheduled. That's a message from the dean, a meeting. It gets very difficult very fast here. Now we're going to blended, and you're a dean. And now the students are emailing saying the professor didn't show up to an online session. What do you do? You know, it's not the same.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Faculty
explain.
Responsibility. The syllabus is a contract between the faculty and the students, as far as I'm concerned. And that means whether you're face-to-face or online, you better have a darn good reason for not showing up. And
I can give you a reason. Technology issues. Serge, what do you say?
I offer them remedial training,
Okay.
but it better not happen twice.
Okay, so now we have to have these policies in place. It's a new world, right?
No, it isn't. It's the same as the policy. I mean, almost every faculty handbook says you're supposed to meet with your students in your classes per the schedule the registrar puts out, right?
Okay. Why don't you explain a little bit more about the new normal? You're very strict on this, but that's because you're using your dean's hat here. So explain. Now let's switch hat and put a faculty hat. Something really happened. The online was down. Something happened. You couldn't do it. You missed one. It's on you. Let's say it happened again and you can't really control it. Now you're in trouble. What do?
You figure out a way around it. I mean, there's got to be some kind of a workaround, even if it's just via email. You make resources available. You may not be able to interact directly with the students, but you can get them to interact. And maybe it's everybody that lives in Hoppersville gets together to work as a team instead of having a randomly assigned team for a project. But there are workarounds. You can't just walk away.
All right, so Eric, I'm going to jump on you here a little bit. What about if you do a recorded session? You record yourself talking to the class. Now it's recorded, it's not synchronous, it's asynchronous. And you send it out to the students saying, if there's issues with the online sync session, watch the video, and here are 3 questions you need to answer. Is it the same thing as being in class, engaging with the students? Quick reaction to this.
I think it depends on the topic and the content you're trying to cover. I think if you're teaching entrepreneurship basics, definitions, fundamentals of a model, then you can be much more effective in that mode. I think if you're trying to get them to develop mindsets and skill sets, that's a lot harder to do that way.
Okay. So then it takes me to the next question, the final question here, and I want to remind everybody in the chat session here, in the webinar here, write your questions. I'm increasing the level of difficulty of the questions here, and I think later on they're going to yell at me saying this was not in the script here, so I've taken some freedom here. But write your questions here and make them difficult, especially the people in the sunny side of the United States. Let me start with Dia. Dia, tell us right from the beginning, what are the 3 things to avoid in your own way about teaching online or engaging online? What are the 3 things we should avoid?
Yes. Number 1 is not overdressed, because sometimes like a video, it can be engagement, but if the overdress, it can be distraction also. So number 2 is not overwhelmed or not clear objective. And number 3 is not well prepared. That is my straight answer for the 3 things to avoid in online.
Great, thank you. Let me switch to Jill. Jill, what are the 3 things to avoid when we're teaching online?
Yeah, I think one is it's pretty basic, is not setting any type of standards. We have I had my students develop, and it was almost kind of like a contract between them going online to develop an etiquette plan. Basically, how do we react to each other? How do we behave in this new environment? And so I think setting some really clear standards about what that looks like. And one of them is, like turning on your webcam. Hey, don't do the dishes don't drive while you're in the Zoom while you're in class. And don't put the dog away or put the dog out or something like that. The noise, the background noise, just some really basic types of things. I think also just don't try to overwhelm your students by trying to do too much and trying to be the best online professor. I mean, I think that's for me, that's unachievable for someone who's just starting to do this and teach online. So those are a couple things, and I think again, just keeping it simple, not overwhelming them, and just really maybe even having that backup plan too. And whether if Zoom goes down, then Google Hangouts or Skype or something, but do have that for sure.
Okay, Alex, 3 things to avoid.
3 things to avoid. Okay. Well, I'm still learning what to do and what not to do. So, the first thing for me that came to my mind is don't try to use too many tools at once. I mean, I'm trying to learn group breakouts. I'm trying to learn how to students turning in assignments online. I'm trying to learn how to use the discussion board. I'm trying to learn how to use polling and other tools that a skilled online professor can switch seamlessly between one to the other to the next. I haven't developed that level of competence yet. So I've got to try to keep it simple and not try to use too many tools at one time. The other thing that I learned the hard way in my first online class last week is don't assume that everything will work the first time. I had watched a couple of videos, for example, on group breakouts, and I preset my breakouts, and I said, I have got this. And when I went into my class and I said, okay, it's time for breakouts, and I could not get it to work. So it's going to take some practice. So don't assume because you watch a video that you can walk into a class and that it's going to work the way it's supposed to. It's going to take some practice on your part. And the third thing is don't ramble in terms of making this primarily a one-way conversation.
Great, thank you. Eric, 3 things to avoid.
You know, I'm actually really curious to know what Julie thinks about what to avoid from the student perspective.
Hold on a minute. We'll ask Julie then. Hold on. Julie, 3 things to avoid. Julie, 3 things to avoid.
Sure. I would say that the technical difficulties are also the same challenges that students face too, right? So even if they're trying their best to accomplish the same things you are, there's all kinds of things that could happen on their side as well. So just being cognizant of that. Also, their priorities when they're alone or at home with all the other distractions are going to change how their engagement is. So be careful not to stick with the same plan. Like Jill, I love the fact that you were talking about, you know, with a 3-hour class, splitting it up so that they're not trying to sit there and focus for 3 hours, but you're splitting it up in different ways throughout the course of the week. I think that's inspired. I just absolutely love that. And then other things to avoid is really to avoid demanding synchronous learning. The world is very different now, and whether you're dealing with adult students or, you know, kind of youthful students, it's going to be different. You have to think about where their heads are at.
Thank you. So back to Eric, back to you. She told her what's on her mind. Now it's back to you.
I think it's really important to just keep in mind that the students don't always have the same lifestyle or home situation that we might. We can probably go into our home office, have a nice quiet environment. Students might be sharing apartments. They might be living in dorms and sharing rooms. And so, you know, with going synchronously, I think there's a lot of benefits and it's great. But understanding there are limitations and knowing what the technology can do for you, like Zoom today allows you to mute everybody that's on the call. So if one person is being really noisy, you can mute that person for them. It helps us avoid some of the challenges. 3 things to avoid. I would avoid taking the easy way out. One thing that scared me a little bit is when I was talking to one of my colleagues and they said, wow, this is awesome. The whole rest of the semester is online. I'm going to put up a couple PowerPoints, make the exam multiple choice, and I can focus on research for the rest of the year until fall. And I think we want to avoid taking sort of that easy, you know, time path for ourselves and really focus on asking ourselves what's the best thing for the student and making sure that we're doing that for them.
Great, thank you. Jeff?
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind. First is that we've got to remember that at least amongst us, with the exception of perhaps Eric, we've been around a while, and our students, including our adult students, are likely to know more about the tools that we're using or be more comfortable with the tools that we're using than we are, at least initially. And so I think that's something that most of us will not will acknowledge, but it's very difficult to build that in. One of the other things to avoid is that in an all online environment, relationships develop in a different way than they do in classrooms and face-to-face situations. In fact, I had a situation where a couple emerged, and they used some of our online platforms to how shall I say, develop their relationship, which was very inappropriate and very awkward to shut down. The other thing to avoid, and I think this has been mentioned, is focusing on just one tool. You know, students will get bored with an hour of straight lecture, whether they're face-to-face or watching a podcast. And so there's got to be a mix of activities in an online environment, just as there is in a face-to-face environment. So those are my three things.
Thank you. And we're running out of time, and I knew we were going to run out of time here, but we have many questions here, and we have a plan for this. Julia and I have been working on here. But I want to ask one question here. I'm going to ask it for all of you to share, and then we'll talk about next steps here. What do you do with a toxic student? A student that is disruptive, that's writing disruptive things on the chat, that's interrupting you while you're talking, if he has his mic on, even though you can turn it off, is just becoming disruptive. In a classroom, when a student is disruptive, you can ask him to leave the classroom. Maybe you can kick him out, but that has different implications here. So let me start with you, Jill. From your experience, what do you do, or have you seen this before, or have you talked to someone before where you have an online toxic student? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I haven't had yet, but I mean, one of the things to manage it online, I mean, if it's immediate, it happens right away, essentially unmute them, and you can also turn their video cam off too as well. Okay, but that's kind of the short term. The long term is essentially having a conversation with that student about their behavior and why it is distracted to the class and to what you're trying to do. So I think that's very important. So yeah, those are kind of just short and long term.
Alex, what do you think?
I don't know. That's my honest answer. You know, in terms of an online situation, you know, I know how, at least I think I know how I would handle it in a face-to-face situation. I mean, you have to take charge of your classroom, and you know, there are certain things that you can do face-to-face, depending upon the extremity of the disruption and if you perceive any potential danger as a result of it. I haven't had to face that online yet, but I would imagine that, you know, the tools of muting and turning a video off are the first things I would look at for the time being.
Great. Eric, what do you think?
You know, I'm gonna push back on your question. I think that sets a tone that this is a reality, or this is a thing that we need to learn to overcome. I actually think technology makes it a lot easier to deal with in terms of disruption in your classroom. You just mute the person. You deal with it after class. If someone comes to your class face to face and they're disruptive, you've got to deal with it in class, in real time. Technology makes this better. It makes the scenario better. And so I don't want people to be afraid of or worried about using online learning and online technology because of that scenario, because I think that we're actually better equipped. For me personally, I'm very candid with my students, and so if they were being disruptive, I would probably pretty much tell them that straightforward.
Jeff, what do you think?
I think it goes back to Jill's etiquette contract or agreement, and whether or not a student is following it. Of course, you can mute them, you can turn them off. You do have to follow up with a conversation with them. The other thing that you can do live is communicate with them via another channel, email, WhatsApp, whatever. And see if they'll change their behavior. Just as we have rules about alcohol in the classroom, you're going to have something similar in your etiquette contract, because you're sitting there in your jammies, right?
Yep.
So that's my reaction. I wouldn't tolerate. I wouldn't tolerate. To Eric's point, though, when you deal with somebody who's being disruptive in a face-to-face class, the whole class knows that you're not going to tolerate it, and it may prevent something in the future from happening. So, there are two sides to that coin.
We have many questions, and we're running out of time. So that's why, at this point, I'm going to ask Julie. We know that this was going to happen. We kind of planned that this is going to happen. This is just going to open up more questions. More people want to engage here. So we at ICSB started this, but now as our partners, USASBE, what are you planning? What are you doing? What is the current status of everything that you're doing to support online education? And what are you planning for potentially a part 2 on the Fireside chat?
Cool, thanks, Ayman. So we're pulling together like a curated list of resources for online education for entrepreneurship. So it's going to have resources with student, things that we can use with students, things that educators can use, different partners, and then as well as just some fun stuff as well. I mean, we all have to kind of smile and laugh about this a little bit too, especially right now. But there's a lot of fun stuff that's out there. We're going to have another Fireside chat on Wednesday of next week, and it's going to be at 11 o'clock Pacific time. That would be 2 o'clock Eastern time. Everybody who was on this list who responded to this will get an invitation, and then we'll also be doing some media pushes as well. I would really like to throw it over to Eric, though, real quickly to please talk about some of the resources that EE&P has and some of the other resources from a research perspective that are available for USASBE members.
Absolutely. So EE&P's Entrepreneurship, Education, and Pedagogy, it is an academic journal, the official journal of USASBE, and published by SAGE. Our partners at SAGE in partnership with USASBE HQ have made all of our teaching cases for the last, all of our volumes, the last 2.5 volumes, completely open and available. So these are great exercises you can use in a synchronous or asynchronous way in your classes if you want to get some free content there. It's definitely there. The other thing I'll just do a quick shout out for is USASBE's Teaching Tuesdays podcast. New one dropping tomorrow around online entrepreneurship education, and certainly a plethora of 30 plus other episodes we've recorded and put out over the past 18 months.
Great. Alex, you had to cancel your California Educators Conference. What are you planning? What is going on? What are you doing?
We've been running, this is our 7th year of running what we call the California Entrepreneurship Educators Conference. And it was really designed for all educators and researchers in our field, not just California. That just happens to be where we're located. When this crisis was first emerging, we were trying to figure out what to do, and many of our speakers were calling us and telling us that they have travel restrictions, and that forced us into a knee-jerk reaction of, well, we got to cancel our conference. But then I looked at the theme for our conference over the last 2 years. In 2019, the theme was transitions. And in 2020, this year's theme was reimagine. And we said, well, why do we want to cancel it if we can reimagine and everyone's going through a transition? So we've reached out to we've reached out to all of our speakers, presenters that were scheduled to participate in this year's California Entrepreneurship Educators Conference. And so far we have a whole lineup of people that were going to present pedagogy, approaches, teaching, curriculum management, and research. So we're going to form a series of presentations that would have been presented live at our conference. We're going to capture that through this ICSB platform, and we will also house these presenters on our Lavin Entrepreneur website as well as the ICSB site, so that the California Entrepreneurship Educators Conference in a reimagined way is alive and well. So watch for announcements for our rollout.
Great, thank you. Jill, I'm going to create a new title for you. You're the USASBE Wartime Digital President.
Okay, all right.
So now you have to leave USASBE in Wartime Digital.
Do I get a crown?
You get a star. You get a
Where's my tiara?
You get a star like in the USASBE logo. What's USASBE? I know Julie's doing a lot of things, but now you need to steer this ship. You got to guide this ship. Is this USASBE, a new USASBE, online, in person? I know you're cooking a lot of things. You're planning a lot of things. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I really think we have opportunity here that, we have opportunity to really help our members, you as well, in terms of really finding new ways and helping them, kind of deal with this new normal, as you say. And I think, USASBE being responsive, but also listening to our members and really what are some of their pain points, what are their struggles right now. And I think taking a very humanistic approach to it, because I think we all come at this with different kind of mindsets and beliefs and fears. And so on Wednesday, so Dawn Winkle is our president-elect of USASBE, will be holding our very first USASBE town hall. And we'd be happy to send it out to your members too as well. But it will be our very first kind of listening tour a bit of, in this environment today, what are the things that we can help, and what are some of the ways and the challenges that we can overcome together, and really create a community of kind of learning and engagement, both as entrepreneurship educators, but also how it transforms into our own classrooms and how we really reimagine. I love Alex's new conference, and I think you're gonna be great, Alex. It's just and you're so responsive to the changing times. So any way that USASBE can help out on that too as well, please let us know.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm gonna go around the world. Dia, what do you think about all of this? You're in Indonesia. You're in a different world. What's your take on all of this?
Yes, my thinking is there always a negative and positive from this crisis. So we push to be more creative, to optimize what we have, technology what we have, discover new opportunity and new experience. This also become our objective, and we are doing online coaching and mentoring now.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, the new editor for our new journal, the Journal of International Council for Small Business, Jeff, what do you think of all of this?
I think it's a great conversation that we had today. What I'm curious about, and quite frankly, a little bit scared of, is what the impact of this coronavirus is going to have. We already have a sense of what it's going to do economically, which is not going to be very pleasant. But that has, economics is a social science. What does it mean for societies? I think it's going to become as much a social challenge as it will be an economic challenge. And how do micro, small, and medium-sized businesses respond, if they can respond at all? So the tools are here. I'm worried that we may have more of a gap between the haves and have-nots, but we just have to figure out how to ride it out. And as Alex was saying, it's probably time to reimagine. and it's probably time to reimagine how we deliver education generally.
Thank you. President Ahmed Osman and President-elect and Sergeant Winslow have sent me messages saying to congratulate all of you and to thank you, Jill, Julie, Eric, Jeff, Alex, and Dia, for contributing your time. And it's not easy with everything that's going on to come and spend an hour and 15 minutes with us here, sharing your information here. So on behalf of the ICSB board and all the members worldwide, we want to thank you all for your time and effort. We look forward to the town hall meeting. We look forward to a reimagine on online. Alex's new conference that's coming up, and hopefully we'll collaborate with USASBE on it as well. And also, I always said this, and this is my personal opinion here, USASBE has a powerful position in the world with entrepreneurship education. It is a best practice. And now it's time that they share their knowledge with everybody. So ICSB is looking forward to our partners to sharing all of this knowledge. We will support them as much as possible in sharing all this information. We want to thank all the members worldwide. This will be put on our YouTube channel and will be shared with everybody to use as much as possible. With that, I want to thank everybody that joined us today here. Have a safe, stay at home, wash your hands, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayman.
Okay, good night. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.